Great. I think we got it.
All right.
Welcome, everyone. We want to thank everyone for joining this session. My name is Danny Waltz. I'm the director of the Redevelopment Agency of Salt Lake City, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this quick introduction into what is an informative session on our 2022 Notice of Funding Availability. We are thrilled to announce that this is the 5th year in a row that the Redevelopment Agency has released a Notice of Funding Availability, otherwise known as our NOFA, for affordable housing within Salt Lake City. We see a lot of new names on this. So for those of you that are new to this process, just some quick background. This is an open and competitive process to apply for funding through what is essentially the agency's Housing Development Loan Program. The intent of that loan program is to provide low interest gap financing to incentivize the development and preservation of affordable housing within Salt Lake City. We're pleased to announce that this year's allocation puts $6 million available for affordable housing projects throughout Salt Lake City. Our goal with this process is to put the money out on the streets and into projects that are in alignment with the city's overall housing plan and carry out the agency's goals for affordable housing. These goals are driven primarily by Mayor Mendenhall and the City Council within their capacity as our board of directors. This year, the RDA board is requiring that all eligible projects include either affordable family-sized units of 3 or more bedrooms and/or deeply affordable units at 40% and below AMI, in addition to the other requirements that are laid out in the Housing Development Loan Program. So to get into those details, I'm going to turn it over to staff, primarily Tracy Tran and Austin Taylor in our office. I want to recognize the amount of work that they put into this process, not only on the front end to prepare this Notice of Funding Availability and put on this information session, but I also want to recognize the work that they do in terms of actually funding these loans and developments and working with you as the developers to put these into projects that we are all dedicated and passionate about seeing come to fruition in Salt Lake City and help alleviate the housing concerns. So Tracy, Austin, I'll turn it over to you to provide an overview for this year's Notice of Funding Availability and get into the requirements. And once again, I just want to thank everyone for attending and certainly want to thank you for your commitment to providing and preserving affordable housing throughout Salt Lake City.
Great. Thank you so much, Danny. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So the presentation is being recorded. So if for some reason you're having some technical difficulties or you have others on your staff that want to be able to view this will be available on our website after today. And everyone is muted currently. So we'll hold all questions to the end just to allow for just a smoother presentation. And if you need any immediate assistance, if you're having any technical difficulties, you can message Kate Warrett on our staff. And with that, so I will begin. So, all right. So why do we need affordable housing in Salt Lake City? So according to the city's 5-year housing plan, there are many reasons, which include that there is a greater demand for housing than supply. Wages are also not rising at the same rate as rental rates and housing prices. And as the city's population continues to increase, so will housing demand and housing costs. We're expecting an additional 30,000 residents by 2030. Insufficient affordable housing options have also resulted in a workforce where 84% commute to work from outside of the city. And housing stability leads to improved performance, health, and general well-being. All right, so here are just some examples of some affordable housing projects that have been funded through the RDA in the past few years. The first one to the top left is the Capitol Homes Apartments. That's located at 1776 Southwest Temple. It's a mixed income, mixed use development with 62 of the 93 units affordable to 25 to 55% AMI. Unit details includes family units with 3-bedroom units, and this was completed last year. The next one going clockwise to the bottom left is Central Station, located at 549 West, 200 South. This is a mixed income housing development where 52 of the 65 units are affordable to 60% AMI and below. This was also completed recently. The next one to the top excuse me, the bottom right is the Jackson Apartments located at 274 West, 200 South. This building was renovated for the preservation of 80 units at 40 to 60% AMI, and these were targeted for seniors, and this was also completed last year. And lastly, on the top right, we have Pamela's Place. This was located at 525 South, 500 West, and this is a permanent supportive housing development that includes 100 deeply affordable units. So that just gives a good overview of kind of some of the projects that we typically have funded in the past. So this year, in terms of funds available, we have, through our Housing Development Loan Program, $6 million for affordable housing. These competitive funds are available for any development located within Salt Lake City boundaries, and these funds have a deadline of October 24th, 2022. The Housing Development Loan Program contains standard loan terms and conditions for different types of financing, which include gap financing for rental construction to permanent, property acquisition, and gap financing for homeownership construction. And the terms and conditions for each of these is different, so please see attachment B in the guidelines for details. The standard loan terms and conditions, the details do vary on the type of financing. Overall, the term can be a shorter term for acquisition or homeownership, and a longer term for gap financing for permanent construction to perm. Interest rates will be based on a percentage over the U.S. Treasury yield curve rate, and the max base interest rate will generally be between 3% and 4%. And the max base interest rate can be reduced by meeting current funding priorities. A 0.5% interest rate reduction is possible per funding priority met. That may reduce the interest rate down to as low as 1% or 2%, depending on kind of how the financing plays out. And Austin Taylor will go over these funding priorities in further detail later on in the presentation. I also wanted to note that a deed restriction will be required to ensure affordability. The restriction period will be the greater of the period of the senior financing, or 30 years for a rental development, or the greater of the period of the senior financing, or 15 years for homeownership. So other terms and conditions include the loan repayment options, which will depend on the financing type. Loans may also be subordinated to leverage private financing. And there are also, adequate collateral will also be required in the form of a deed of trust, promissory note, and guarantees. And there are also requirements regarding kind of developer fee. So you'll want to just check the guidelines for those details. Again, all of those details are located in attachment B of the Housing Development Loan Program guidelines. And just make sure you're looking at the type of financing you're seeking for those details. Let's see. All right, and then so successful applications. So once applicants go through this process, anyone who is awarded funding will receive a conditional commitment of funding, and that will be determined by the project scope, timing, and approvals. And the commitment will expire if the project has not obtained all required financial, legal, and regulatory approvals necessary for the loan closing. Displacement is strongly discouraged, and if necessary and unavoidable, projects must submit a relocation plan that complies with federal, state, and local relocation requirements. And all projects shall comply with any applicable design standards and any applicable Salt Lake City building codes and ordinances. So right now I'll turn it over to Austin. He'll go through a little more details of our threshold requirements.
Thanks, Tracy. So let's talk about what makes you or your project eligible for these funding sources. First of all, there are a number of different applicants that can apply. Your group can be a for-profit corporation, a partnership, joint ventures, sole proprietorships. You can be a nonprofit group. You can also be a public housing agency. It's pretty flexible there. On eligible project types, your project has to be either new construction, a rehabilitation of current housing or an adaptive reuse of another building. And then some other sets of thresholds that you have to meet and able to qualify for our funding. We want to make sure that development teams have the necessary experience and skills to get the project done. So in your application, you'll be showing us your capacity to build and some past projects that you have completed. The funding is eligible to be used for land and property acquisition, as well as construction costs, site improvements, and other soft costs. When you apply for the grant, you're going to have to show us that you control the site. That can be through ownership, an option to purchase, a sale agreement, or a long-term lease. And then for affordability requirements, at least 20% of your units need to be affordable to households earning 60% AMI or less for rental projects. For home ownership developments, your project should be affordable to households earning 80% AMI or less and be sold at no more than 95% of the median purchase price. Your projects also have to comply with citywide policies and plans, such as general plan, zoning code, neighborhood plans, and all that. As far as how much our loans are able to fill in your financing gap, the RDA's funds will comprise of no more than 10% of your total development cost. We also have a sustainability requirement for projects using RDA funds. All projects must have all electric design, so no on-site combustion is allowed, no natural gas. Your buildings have to be designed to earn an Energy Star score of 90 or higher. And then buildings are also required to report their annual electricity use to the city's Elevate Buildings program. That's an ongoing requirement. So this is a new set of thresholds that we have just for this year. As Danny said in the beginning, you can choose one of these two different thresholds. The first one is that at least 10% of your units are available and affordable to households earning 40% AMI or less. And the second option is that at least 10% of your units are affordable to households at 60% AMI or less and have 3 bedrooms or more. As Tracy talked about, we have a set of priorities in the RDA that we like to fund towards. So this is a list of things that if your project addresses these things, it'll be a more competitive project and you'll be eligible for interest rate reductions down to 1 or 2%, like Tracy said. You can see a list of these different priorities in the packet and more explanation about them in the packet. As far as the application goes, the deadline to apply for this funding is October 24th at 5 p.m. You'll be submitting your application via email to Tracy. And let's see, let's go to the next one. And here's the schedule. So as you can see, we've got today, we released the NOFA on September 6th. Today we're doing the info session. We also have a question period where you can ask questions about, maybe some of the project priorities, questions about funding timeline and all that. You're able to ask those questions up until October 17th. You can ask those on our SciQuest website where the RFP was posted, or you can ask it to Tracy. We will be posting all of the answers to the questions so everybody has the same information so that it's clear and transparent. All applications are due October 24th, again, via email to Tracy at 5 o'clock. After that, we will have a review period to see which projects meet the minimum thresholds, and we'll proceed to phase 3. From there, we'll have another review period where we will evaluate and rank different projects so that we can forward them to finance committees and board of directors. And then the final selection will be on December 13th. That might change depending on board schedule. That's the date we're looking at, and that'll be a decision by the board on which projects get selected for funding and how much funding is awarded to them. And then lastly, you'll get a conditional commitment and a commitment to loan closing after that decision by the board. There are a couple other processes that might be helpful as you're in the pre-construction phase of your development. The first one is that the city has a development review team that meets at least weekly that can help you with things like design to see if it's meeting the zoning code, to see if you're going to work with the utilities, you've got the right design with the easements around it, setbacks and all that. This is a very helpful group that can help you comply with the city's codes. The second one is that you can do a pre-submittal meeting through the planning division, and they'll make sure again that you're meeting all the city's requirements. These are two optional things. You don't have to do this to comply with or to be eligible for the housing development loan, but these are things that we recommend that you do. They will be helpful. Make sure that your development goes smoothly and you don't run into any unforeseen roadblocks along the way. And then lastly, this is our contact information. If you have any questions about the housing development loan, feel free to ask us and we will answer your questions that you have. Thanks. We're happy to take questions you guys have right now. So I think Kate might be in charge of the questions, and you want to just raise your hands here.
Yeah, if you have any questions, if you go under the participant list, you can raise your hand. It's a button hand, so we can help you through that. Okay, so it looks like sorry, Kate, I think you had a question there, but it went away.
I just put that they can
Oh,
type a question.
okay, great. All right,
There
looks
are
like
no
there's
questions yet.
okay, looks like there's a question from Jonathan Olson.
Yeah, I just had a question about the Energy Star requirement. How are you going to measure that for projects that are not underway?
Yeah, so there's a link under the guidelines that leads you to like an Energy Star website, and there's there's like not a survey, but it's kind of like a survey you fill out based on kind of details from your project that you can input, and it'll provide like an Energy Star score. And if your project is not at that point, it will be a condition of loan closing if your project isn't at that point. Does that answer your question?
So basically, it's going to be a self-report.
Well, it's going to be through the Energy Star website, so it'll provide a score. It's a SEDI score, so that'll shoot out like a report of based on what your development details are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay. Doesn't look like there are any. Kate, Austin, do you see any other questions?
I don't see any others.
No.
But we can remind people that if they do have questions, they can ask them up until that question cutoff period is. I think it was said as October 17th. And we will post the questions that you ask and the answers online so that everybody has the same information as you're going to apply.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you everyone for attending. You definitely email us, or you can visit the Utah Public Procurement website and type in this NOFA Housing Development Loan Program to pull up kind of the public listing, and you can also ask questions there, but we will make sure to provide answers to all questions that are asked throughout this process. So with that, we would like to just say thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see a lot of your development projects apply for this funding. All right, have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.